Thank you, Com. They say you can tell how important a politician is by how long it takes to organise to get them to speak at something. So I'm sure it took many months to organise to get David Miliband here. Were they to try and get Tony Blair here? I'm sure it would have taken them a year. But when Colm texted me this morning and said, "What are you doing later?" I think today we've had a very thorough going through of New Labour. So let me try in my short time today to offer you something different. In order to do that, I want to use my first minute to reaffirm my credentials. I was a whole 20 years old. I wasn't your babysitter, so I wasn't quite that level. And I was one of those young people shuffled in for the photos, running around delivering leaflets, being drilled that you spent no more than 30 seconds on any doorstep. I literally have the T-shirt. I know we weren't dancing to Things Can Only Get Better. It was the rewriting of 3 lines. I was there. I tell stories now to my staff, like my grandmother used to tell me stories of the war and rationing and silk parachutes, about what it was like, that delirious hope of having a prime minister who would stand on the steps of the Aylesbury estate and pledge to end child poverty. I know what it was like to have hope, which is why in my second minute, I want to tell you that we fetishise or mythologise New Labour at our peril today, and that we have to understand that its ability to be what it was and do what it did was of its time. And so if we want to win again and to be again a project, as David said, we have to be of this time and this generation and the challenges that we face. Consider this. In office, Tony Blair didn't send a single email. If you think about the world we live in now and how social media, how our ability to communicate has completely upended not just politics and the use of Facebook, but our personal and social lives, it is a different world. Back then, yes, you had cash for questions and morality questions, but nobody ever doubted the basic decency of John Major. Contrast that now with a politics besmirched by Boris Johnson and dead cat bounce politics, which actually makes all of us appear as if we are untrustworthy. Back then, the New Labour government led the call for multilateral disarmament. When we look at the world now, we look at what is happening in Ukraine, we look at the consequences of Brexit and Britain's ability to promote internationalism, we know that we are going to need more international organisations, not fewer. And back then, literally it was about money to save the NHS. But saying NHS, NHS, NHS now, in a world where everybody is promising funding, and actually the challenge that we face, and I say this as a constituency with high levels of poverty, is to keep people out of hospital, to keep them well rather than waiting to go into a bed, then clearly NHS reform is a very different topic. It's not just about how the world is different, it's also about how you do politics being different. Because one of the challenges about the New Labour government was it tried to do politics from the centre. 25 years ago, that was hard work. Now it would be impossible. Whether we are talking about the social care crisis, climate change, tackling the cost of living crisis, you cannot do politics to people if you want it truly to be empowering and egalitarian. You have to do politics with people. And many of the issues on which we would hold New Labour to account, whether it is personal debt, and I know a little bit about legal loan sharks, but also PFI, or indeed the Iraq War, or indeed the failure of the New Deal, came from that failure to have that relationship with the public. It's very easy to undo something like Sure Start when people don't feel they own it, when it's something that council is doing to you rather than something that you run. Now, what do I think we should take from New Labour? My final 4th minute. Because actually I think there is something very powerful that we've missed in all our conversations about New Labour. We all talk about focus groups. We talk about the stereotype that New Labour was led by those discussions. The third way was about finding a way between left and right. But we also forget how the New Labour government stood for something. Because frankly, in the 1990s, very few people were talking about a national minimum wage or about ending child poverty. That wasn't coming up in the focus groups. New Labour showed you didn't just have to listen to the public, you also have to lead with it. That you can't just ride out a storm. Actually, if you want to be a project, if you want to be that alternative, you have to make the political weather. So, let me urge a word of caution. There is a risk here at this conference, there is a risk for the Labour Party now as there was 25 years ago, that New Labour becomes the equivalent of Friends on our TV. Endlessly repeated, debated, dissected, every generation deciding what's wrong or right about it, when really what we need is a new story to tell for a new time. And that every generation has to learn that true radicalism means constant renewal, constant revisionism, constant stress testing of your ideas and your ways of working. I have those shabby old t-shirts, but I'll never forget the need for renewal and the need for revision, because that's the lesson from 1997 that we need to take 25 years later. Thank you.